The orange juice carton in our fridge was always lighter than it should have been, and the first time I heard someone gulping it straight from the spout in the dark, I stayed quiet and broke inside. Because if it was really my roommate doing that, then what else of mine had he already swallowed without asking? My name is Waverly. I am 27, and I work as a pediatric nurse, which means I spend my days telling other people to wash their hands, cover their mouths, and respect basic boundaries. I thought I had a thick skin. I thought I could handle anything. But there is something uniquely infuriating about coming home after a brutal shift, craving one small comfort, and finding out someone has been treating your groceries like a community pantry. When I moved into the apartment, it felt like a grown-up reset. New city, new job, new start. The place was modest but bright, with a narrow galley kitchen and a fridge that hummed like a sleepy animal. My roommate Rhodes seemed normal enough on day one. He was charming in that easy, boyish way, the kind of guy who said things like, "I am chill, I do not do drama," and somehow made it sound like a personality trait. He worked in sales. He had expensive sneakers lined up by the door. He had a laugh that filled the room, and he had an unspoken confidence that everything around him was, at least partially his. The first week, I told myself the missing things were my fault. My oat milk was half gone faster than I expected. My deli turkey vanished slice by slice. My bagels seemed to shrink into thin air. The orange juice, though, was the one that made my stomach drop because I had a routine with it. I would pour a small glass after work, stand at the counter, and let the cold sweetness pull me back into my body. It was a tiny ritual that told my brain, you survived the day. One Thursday night, I opened the fridge and the carton felt wrong. Lighter. Not empty, but not right. I stared at it for a long time. I could hear Rhodes in his room, laughing into his headset, probably gaming with friends. I wanted to believe it was accidental, but the math was not mathing. I had bought it 2 days ago. I waited until the next morning, when we both happened to be in the kitchen. I tried to keep my voice neutral, like I was handing out a pamphlet. "Hey, did you have any of my orange juice?" Rhodes did not even blink. He opened a cabinet, pulled out a mug, and said, "Oh yeah, I had a little last night. I was dying of thirst. A little." I could feel heat push up my neck, but I swallowed it. I reminded myself that adults talk. Adults communicate. Adults do not go feral over citrus. "Okay," I said. "Can you not, though? I buy my own stuff." He turned, flashed that careless grin, and lifted both hands like I had accused him of a felony. "Relax. I thought we were sharing." My bad. Sharing. Like I had ever said that. Like we had signed some invisible roommate treaty where my groceries automatically became his. Still, I let it go. I even labeled a few things after that, as gently as possible. A sticky note on the orange juice, my name on the cream cheese, a little container for my snacks. It felt childish, and yet I did it anyway, because my brain kept trying to solve the problem the polite way. For 2 days, nothing went missing. Then, on Saturday, I came home early from an overnight shift, feet aching, hair smelling like sanitizer, and I found my labeled cream cheese sitting on the counter. Lid off, a knife streaked with it, like someone had wiped their mouth with my boundary and left it out to spoil. In that moment, I did not feel anger first. I felt humiliation. I felt like a guest in my own apartment. Like my needs were a suggestion, not a rule. Like my word had no weight. Rhodes walked in behind me, barefoot, yawning, holding his phone. "Oh," he said, seeing my face. "You are home." I looked at the cream cheese. I looked at the knife. I looked at him. "Did you use that?" He shrugged. "I made a bagel. I was in a rush. It has my name on it." He sighed like I was exhausting. "Waverly, it is not that deep. I will replace it." It was always that sentence. It is not that deep. The universal excuse for people who make everything deeper by refusing to respect simple lines. I took a breath because if I opened my mouth too fast, I could already feel my voice getting sharp. And sharp would give him an out. Sharp would let him say I was emotional. Sharp would turn me into the problem. So I said it quietly. "It is deep to me. Please stop eating my food." Rhodes lifted his eyebrows and laughed, soft and dismissive. Okay. You are really serious about your little snacks." Little snacks. I went to my room and closed the door with gentle care. The kind of care that meant I was trying not to slam it. I sat on my bed and stared at my hands. My palms were still damp from work, from gloves, from other people's emergencies. I had spent the night helping a terrified mother soothe her child through a fever, and now I was home arguing about cream cheese. Something in me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet click like a lock turning. If Rhodes wanted to play dumb, fine. I would stop explaining. I would stop pleading. I would stop giving him the benefit of my softness. I would teach him using his favorite language. Comfort. The next 2 days were my weekend off. Rhodes was home too because he had apparently taken a long weekend. I could hear him in the living room, laughing, making coffee, scrolling, existing like the world owed him ease. And I made a decision. I would not fight him. I would not accuse him. I would not raise my voice. I would let him feel uncomfortable in the one place he thought he was safe. On Sunday morning, I came into the kitchen wearing an old hoodie, hair messy on purpose. I did not put on my usual calm face. I moved slowly like my body hurt. I coughed into my elbow, not in a dramatic way, but in a way that made the air feel different. Rhodes glanced at me. "You good?" I nodded once, small. "Yeah, just tired." My stomach has been weird. His attention drifted back to his phone, but I saw it. A slight pause. The little calculation. I opened the fridge and took out the orange juice. Then I did something I never do. I unscrewed the cap and drank straight from it. Slow, like I needed it. I let my mouth touch the rim. I swallowed, then paused like I might gag. I did not. I just exhaled and set it back in the fridge. Rhodes watched. His face did not change much, but his eyes did. I turned, walked to the sink, and washed my hands for a long time, like someone trying to be responsible while still being miserable. That night, I made sure I was in the kitchen when he walked in. I opened the fridge again, took out my tub of yogurt, and ate a spoonful. Then I let the spoon clink into the sink and, with exaggerated casualness, scooped another bite using a clean finger, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I could practically hear his brain screaming, "What is she doing?" He did not say anything. He just stared, then opened the freezer, grabbed ice, and left. Monday morning, I pushed it it further. Not gross, not dangerous, not anything that would actually hurt someone, just enough to ignite that deep human fear of contamination. I stood in front of the fridge and talked to myself softly. I should probably not go in today, I murmured, like I was thinking out loud. I do not want to get anyone sick. Rhodes froze mid-step. I turned my head like I had forgotten he existed. Oh, hey, yeah, I think I caught something at work. It is going around. His mouth tightened. What kind of something? I shrugged. You know, stomach stuff. Fever. The fun kind. Then I smiled small and opened the fridge. I pulled out the orange juice again and took another long drink, letting the silence stretch. Rhodes stared at the carton like it had fangs. I could see it clicking for him. The realization that his little hobby of stealing had been relying on one assumption, that my food was clean, untouched, safe, and that assumption was starting to wobble. But here's the truth that made my chest ache even while I played this quiet game. I should not have to do this. I should not have to perform discomfort just to protect what I paid for. I should not have to turn my own kitchen into a psychological battlefield. Yet somehow the calmness in my body felt better than any argument had, because for the first time since moving in, Rhodes looked uncertain, and uncertainty was the only boundary he respected. Later that afternoon, he opened the fridge and hesitated. Actually hesitated. He reached for the orange juice, stopped, and pulled his hand back like the carton might bite him. He shut the fridge and walked away without taking anything. A small victory, but my heart still thumped like I was doing something risky. Because I knew Rhodes. He would not confront me right away. He would watch first. He would wait until he could make me explain myself, so he could decide whether to laugh it off or act offended. And I was counting on that. Quick real-life pause. This part is for me. Some nights I am editing and I want to quit, but then I see your comments and I keep going. Like, subscribe, and tell me your city, state, or country. Okay, continuing. That evening, I came home with groceries and put them away slowly, deliberately. I made sure Rhodes saw the labels. My name clean and clear, my shelf, my drawer. I was not dramatic about it. I did it the way a nurse changes a dressing. Calm, precise, non-negotiable. Rhodes leaned against the counter, watching me like I was rearranging his world. Are we doing this now? He asked, voice light but eyes sharp. I did not look at him. I just slid my orange juice onto my shelf and closed the fridge. I have been doing this, I said softly. You just did not listen, he scoffed. I did not know it mattered this much. It mattered. I finally met his eyes. I have asked you more than once. For a second, his confidence flickered. Then he tried a different tactic, the one people use when they realize they might be losing control. So what, you are sick now and drinking out of everything? That is kind of nasty, Waverly. I let the silence sit, not because I did not have words, because I wanted him to feel them before I said anything. Then I tilted my head slightly, like I was genuinely confused. Why would I dirty extra dishes if I am the only one using my stuff? Rhodes blinked. I kept my voice even, almost curious. I mean, if nobody else is taking my food, it should not bother anyone, right? His jaw tightened. His eyes darted to the fridge. He did not answer. And that was the moment I knew he had been doing it more than he ever admitted. Not just a sip, not just a bite. He had been comfortable enough to feel threatened by the idea that my food might actually be mine. Rhodes swallowed and tried to laugh, but it came out thin. That is gross. I shrugged. I washed my hands. I am fine. His face shifted, and for a split second, I saw something else behind the annoyance. Panic. Because now the risk was not me being mad. The risk was him not knowing what he had already consumed. He stared at me like he wanted to accuse me, but he could not. Not without admitting what he had been doing. Not without exposing himself. So he did what people do when they are cornered by their own behavior. He tried to negotiate. Maybe, he said slowly, we should just, I do not know, split the fridge, like shelves, separate drawers, so nobody gets confused. I almost smiled, but I kept my face neutral. I nodded once, like it was his brilliant idea and not the boundary I had been asking for the entire time. Sure, I said. That sounds smart. Rhodes exhaled, relieved, as if he had solved the problem. As if he was the hero of the kitchen. But I was not done, because the real lesson was not the fridge. The real lesson was that I could stay calm, say less, and still make him change. And I was about to find out just how far he had pushed this with other people, too. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the fridge door opening and closing, softly, like someone was trying not to get caught. I lay there in the dark, staring at my ceiling, listening for footsteps. I heard Rhodes's voice in the kitchen, low, like he was talking to himself, and then the distinct crack of a can opening. A minute later, he walked past my door, and I caught a whiff of something sweet and citrusy in the air. I sat up slowly, not because I was surprised, because I had finally realized something that made my skin prickle. Rhodes was not just stealing food. He was testing what he could take without consequences, the same way someone presses on a bruise just to see how much you will tolerate. I went into the kitchen and found my orange juice exactly where I had left it. On my shelf, label facing out like a warning. The cap was on. The carton looked innocent. But when I lifted it, I felt the difference. It was lighter again. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Then I turned and looked at Rhodes. He was leaning on the counter in gym shorts, scrolling his phone like nothing in the world mattered. When he noticed me holding the carton, his mouth tightened just a fraction. He did not speak. He just watched to see what I would do. That was when the quiet game changed. I could have confronted him. I could have said, you promised. You suggested shelves. You acted like you finally understood. But the thing about people like Rhodes is that confrontation feeds them. It gives them an opening to argue, to minimize, to twist your words until you feel like you are the unreasonable one for wanting basic respect. So I did not accuse him. I smiled. It was a small smile, like I was amused by a private joke. Then I opened the fridge, took out my cream cheese, and used a clean spoon to scoop some onto a plate. I did it slowly, with this almost exaggerated care, like I was performing cleanliness for an audience. Rhodes's eyes tracked every movement. I put the spoon in the sink, washed it, dried it, and placed it back in the drawer. Then I looked at him again and said, casually, I think I am going to start tracking my groceries, just for my own sanity. His brows lifted. Tracking. Yeah, I said, like a little list, so I know what I I have. It helps me meal prep. Meal prep was the kind of phrase that sounded responsible, normal, not threatening. But Rhodes's fingers paused on his phone screen. His throat moved when he swallowed. He forced a laugh. That is intense. I shrugged. My job is intense. This is easy. He did not respond. He just turned back to his phone, but his thumb scrolled too fast, like he was trying to outrun his own thoughts. That afternoon, I went to the store and bought 2 things I did not even need right away. A new orange juice and a new jar of pickles. Not because I wanted to waste money, because I wanted control, because I wanted the ability to prove to myself and to anyone else that I was not imagining it. When I got home, I put the new orange juice on my shelf, but I did not throw away the old one. I set the old carton in the back, behind a bigger container like it was less important. Then I did something Rhodes would never notice unless he had been messing with it. I turned the cap a certain way, so the edge of the ridges lined up with the corner of my label. It was subtle. It looked normal, but I would know. I did the same thing with the pickles. I wiped the rim clean, tightened the lid, and placed the jar with the logo facing forward. Then I stepped back, like an artist admiring a painting no one else understood. That night, Rhodes had a friend over. I heard their voices in the living room, a deep laugh I did not recognize. Then Rhodes's voice getting louder, showier, like he wanted to perform how relaxed and in charge he was. I stayed in my room for a while, letting them have the space. I did not want to look like I was policing anything. I wanted Rhodes to feel comfortable. When I finally walked into the kitchen for water, his friend was sitting at our small table, elbows spread wide, occupying space like he paid rent. He looked up and smiled politely. "This is Waverly," Rhodes said. "My roommate." His friend nodded. "Nice to meet you. I am Grant." I smiled back. "Nice to meet you." Then I opened the fridge. Rhodes went quiet behind me. I felt it like a hand on my neck. I reached for my orange juice, poured a glass, and drank it slowly. I could feel Grant watching, not because he cared about juice, but because Rhodes was watching too hard, like he was waiting for me to do something gross again. I kept my movements calm and clean. I even rinsed the glass when I was done and put it in the dishwasher. Grant chuckled. "You two seem organized." Rhodes laughed too fast. "Yeah, we had to get a system. Waverly is, very particular." Particular. I turned and leaned lightly against the counter. I kept my face gentle, my voice soft. "I am not particular," I said. "I just like knowing my stuff will be there when I need it." Grant nodded like that made perfect sense. Rhodes's smile tightened again, but he did not correct me. He could not in front of someone else, not without sounding guilty. After Grant left, Rhodes lingered in the kitchen, pretending to wipe down the counter. I could feel him building up to something. He was the type who needed the last word, the type who could not stand feeling like he had been outplayed in silence. He finally said, "You have been kind of weird lately." I looked up from the sink. "Weird." "Yeah," he said, and his voice had that careful edge people use when they want to accuse you but do not want to admit they are accusing you, like with the sick thing. "And the tracking. It is making the apartment feel tense." I almost laughed, because there it was. Not an apology, not accountability, just the suggestion that my response to being disrespected was the real problem. I dried my hands slowly. Then I said, "Rhodes, I have asked you not to take my food more than once. You said you would stop." He lifted his shoulders. "I have stopped." I held his gaze. "Really?" His eyes flicked just for a second toward the fridge. Then he said, "I mean, if something is missing, maybe you are forgetting. You work nights. You are tired. You said yourself you are not feeling great." My stomach turned, not from sickness, but from the way he tried to use my own words as a weapon. It was a small thing, the kind of gaslight that slips under your skin. Not dramatic enough to call out in a group chat. Not obvious enough for a stranger to believe, just enough to make you question yourself. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when you are alone with your thoughts. I let the silence stretch again. Then I nodded once, like he had made a fair point. "Okay," I said. Rhodes blinked. That was not what he expected. He expected me to argue, to get loud, to get defensive. Instead, I walked to my room and shut the door with gentle care. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Rhodes was not going to stop because he respected me. He was going to stop only when it cost him something. So I made a plan that cost him nothing on the surface, but everything underneath. The next day, I started my tracking list. Not on paper where it could be lost, not in a notebook he could call dramatic. I used my phone. Quiet, simple. Each time I bought something, I snapped a photo of the receipt, then a photo of the item on my shelf. I did not do it like a detective. I did it like a tired woman who wanted peace. I also started noticing other things, like how Rhodes never replaced anything he borrowed, how the shampoo bottle in the shower always seemed to last forever, while mine vanished quickly, how my laundry detergent level dropped even on weeks I barely did laundry. It hit me slowly, like a bruise forming. This was not about food. This was about entitlement. And then came the micro twist that made my blood run cold. On Friday, I got a text from our landlord. Not an angry text, not a threatening one, just a casual check-in. "Hey, quick question. Everything okay at the unit? Rhodes mentioned a possible plumbing issue because of the kitchen sink. Any problems I should know about?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. The kitchen sink was fine. I read it again. Rhodes mentioned. My mouth went dry. He was setting a narrative. Not about the sink, not really. About me, about the apartment, about tension, about problems. A tiny paper trail, just enough to make me look like the difficult roommate if anything ever escalated. I felt anger, hot and sharp, but I swallowed it down until it turned into something colder. I replied to the landlord calmly, "No issues on my end. Sink seems normal. I will let you know if anything changes." Then I took a screenshot, not because I wanted drama, because Rhodes had just shown me he was willing to talk around me instead of to me, and that meant I needed to protect myself the way I protect myself at work, with documentation. That night, Rhodes came home in a good mood, humming, tossing his keys onto the counter. He opened the fridge and grabbed the old orange juice carton from the back, the one I had hidden like bait. I watched from the hallway, perfectly still. He glanced over his shoulder, saw me, and froze with the carton in his hand. For a second, we both just looked at each other. His face was blank, like he had been caught mid-thought. laughed. Then he forced a laugh and said, "Oh, this one is almost empty." I was going to toss it. He had not even opened it yet, and he was already lying. I stepped forward, slow, and tilted my head. "The cap is lined up differently than I left it?" Rhodes's smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" I walked closer. Close enough to see a tiny dot of orange juice damp on the side, like it had been wiped with a thumb. Close enough to smell citrus on his breath. I kept my voice soft. "I just want to be clear. Are you still drinking my orange juice?" His eyes narrowed, and in that narrowing, I saw his anger surfacing. Because now I was not just asking. I was forcing him to choose between admitting it or escalating. And Rhodes hated being forced. He set the carton down hard. "I told you," I stopped. "You are being paranoid." Paranoid. My heart thumped, but my face stayed calm. "Okay," I said again. Rhodes stared at me like he wanted to shake a reaction out of my body. Then he walked away, muttering something under his breath that I did not catch. But I did not need to catch it, because the next morning, when I opened my phone, I saw a new notification in our roommate group chat that Rhodes had created months ago and barely used. A message from him sent late at night. It was a photo of our kitchen counter, zoomed in on a single crumb, a smear near the cutting board, and a cup left by the sink. And underneath it, he had typed, "Can we please keep things cleaner? Some of us are getting sick." I stared at the screen until my hands started shaking, because now he was doing it. He was flipping the story, making me the disgusting one, making me the problem. And the worst part was that if anyone believed him, I would look guilty just by defending myself. I inhaled slowly, feeling the rage settle into my bones like a decision. Then I opened my camera roll. I scrolled to my quiet little photos, receipts, shelves, caps aligned, timestamps. And I realized I did not need to argue. I just needed to show the truth to the right person at the right time. I did not reply in the group chat right away. I set my phone down on my bed, sat on the edge of the mattress, and pressed my palms into my thighs until the shaking stopped. My first instinct was to defend myself, to type fast, to explain everything, to point out how insane it was that he was calling me dirty when he had been drinking straight from my carton like a raccoon in a campsite. But that is what Rhodes wanted. He wanted noise. He wanted emotion. He wanted me to look reactive, unstable, dramatic. If I exploded, he could hold up my anger like a receipt and say, "See, this is what I deal with." So I did the opposite. I got up, walked to the bathroom, and washed my face with cold water. I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked tired, but there was something steady underneath the exhaustion. The same steadiness I use at work when parents panic, when doctors speak too quickly, when someone needs calm more than they need comfort. I went back to my room and opened my folder. Receipts, photos, timestamps, my shelf, my labels, the cap alignment, the landlord text, the quiet documentation that had felt almost silly when I started it, and now felt like armor. Then I made one more decision. I was not going to make this public in a messy way. I was going to make it undeniable in a clean way. First, I messaged the landlord privately. Short, professional, no emotion. "Hi, just responding to the sink question from earlier. There is no plumbing issue from my side. Also, I wanted to mention, I have been dealing with an ongoing roommate issue regarding food and shared supplies. I have documentation if needed. I am asking to be removed from any responsibility for missing items or cleanliness claims in the common areas going forward." I attached 2 screenshots, the landlord's earlier text, and Rhodes's group chat photo with his line about someone getting sick. Then I waited, not anxiously, not pacing. I put on scrubs and went to work. When you spend a shift watching other people's emergencies, your own becomes strangely quiet. But it was still there, sitting in my chest like a stone. Every time I had a spare second, my mind flicked back to that chat message, the smear, the crumb, the way he had typed, "Some of us are getting sick," like he was the victim of my existence. By the time I got home that evening, the apartment felt different. The air felt staged, like Rhodes had been moving through it with a script in his head. He was in the kitchen when I walked in, wiping the counter again. Too much wiping, too careful, like he was preparing for inspection. He looked up and smiled like we were fine. "Hey," he said, "long day." I nodded and set my bag down. Yeah, he waited. He wanted me to mention the chat. He wanted me to bite. I did not. I poured myself a glass of water, drank slowly, and watched him pretend to be relaxed. Finally, he could not stand the silence. So he said, kind of casually, "Did you see what I sent?" I turned my head slightly. I did. He shrugged like it was no big deal. "I just think we should keep things sanitary, you know, especially if you are sick." I do not want to get sick. The way he said it, the way he held my gaze, it was almost impressive. He was not yelling. He was not accusing directly. He was positioning himself as reasonable, concerned, mature, and he was trying to make me feel dirty without ever saying the word. I set my glass down carefully. "I am not sick," I said. Rhodes blinked. "You literally said you caught something." I nodded. I said I thought I caught something, past tense. "And I was careful, like I always am." He scoffed. "Just a little. Okay, I just do not want you doing weird stuff with the food again." There it was. Weird stuff. He wanted to trap me into admitting something gross, so he could frame it as my fault that he stopped taking my food, like he had been protecting himself from me, not stealing from me. I kept my voice soft. "I only handle my food." Rhodes laughed. "Sure." Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice like this was a secret between us. "Look, Waverly, I do not know what is going on with you lately, but you are making the apartment uncomfortable. And the landlord already asked me if everything was okay, so maybe you should just chill." My stomach tightened, so that was the play. He had already talked to the landlord again, not about the sink, about me, about discomfort, about tension. He was building a little case brick by brick while smiling in my face. I nodded slowly like I was considering his advice. "Okay," I said. His eyes narrowed because, again, I was not giving him the reaction he wanted. Then he tried a different angle, one that hit lower. "If you cannot handle living with people, maybe you should not have a roommate," he said. I looked at him for a long second. I could feel the anger behind my ribs, but I kept it leashed. "I can handle living with people," I said. "I just do not like living with someone who takes what is not theirs." Rhodes's face tightened. "Are you still on that?" I did not answer. I walked into my room and closed the door gently, like I was putting a lid on something dangerous. I slept with my phone on my pillow pillow, screen down. In the morning, there was a new message from the landlord. Thanks for letting me know. I would like to meet with both of you briefly this week to clarify expectations. Also, please forward any documentation you have about missing items or cleanliness claims, so this does not become a he said, she said situation. I stared at the words, feeling a cold relief spread through me. He said, she said, that was exactly what Rhodes was trying to force, and the landlord had just handed me permission to end it. I forwarded a clean, organized email. No insults, no sarcasm, just facts. A timeline of conversations, my labels, photos of my shelf and drawer, photos of my items before and after, the cap alignment pictures, my receipts, the landlord's first text about the sink, then Rhodes's group chat message about cleanliness and sickness, then a short note. I am not asking for punishment. I am asking for clear separation and for my reputation to be protected. I do not want to be blamed for messes I did not create or items I did not use. Then I did the second part of my plan. I replied in the roommate group chat. One message. Clean, calm. Rhodes, I understand wanting a clean shared space. For clarity, I am not sick. Also, I do not use your items. I only use mine. Since there seems to be confusion, I am attaching photos of my shelf and drawer setup and receipts for my groceries. I am happy to keep everything separate, as you suggested earlier, so there is no mix-up. I attached 3 images, one of my shelf with my name labels, one of my drawer, one screenshot of the earlier text thread from Rhodes, the one he had sent me weeks ago after our argument, where he had written, maybe we should each have our own shelves and drawers so nobody gets confused. The moment I hit send, I felt my hands go still, because I had not accused him. I had not said stop stealing. I had simply quoted his own idea back to him, in front of the only audience that mattered. Our written record, our landlord, our shared proof. Rhodes came out of his room less than a minute later. He did not knock. He did not ask. He just opened my door halfway, face tight, eyes sharp. Why would you send that? He hissed. I sat on my bed and looked up at him like he was a stranger, because in that moment he was. Send what? I said quietly. He stepped in, voice low, furious. The screenshot. You are making me look like I am stealing. I held his gaze. If you are not taking my stuff, then it should not make you look like anything, I said. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You are twisting this, he said. I shook my head once. I am not twisting anything. I am keeping things clear. He stared at me like he wanted to yell, but he could not. If he raised his voice, he would become the aggressive one. If he admitted anything, he would confirm it. So he did what he always did when he was cornered. He tried to make me feel guilty for protecting myself. You are acting like I am some kind of criminal over orange juice, he snapped. I stayed calm. It was not just orange juice. It was the way you talked to me about it. The way you lied. The way you tried to make me look dirty instead of just stopping. Rhodes's face flushed. I did not lie. I tilted my head slightly. Then why did you tell the landlord there was a sink issue? And why did you tell the group chat someone was getting sick? His eyes flicked away. That tiny flick told me everything. He was not mad because he was innocent. He was mad because I had taken away his ability to rewrite the story. 2 days later, we met with the landlord in the living room. It felt surreal, sitting on our couch like we were children called into the principal's office. Rhodes wore a clean hoodie and that polite smile he used for strangers. I wore regular clothes, hair pulled back, hands folded in my lap. The landlord was calm but firm. He laid out the rules plainly. Separate shelves and drawers. No touching the other person's groceries or supplies. Shared items only if both agree in writing. And cleanliness expectations clearly split. Rhodes nodded the whole time, like he had been the reasonable one all along. Then the landlord looked at him and said something that made my heart thump in a new way. Also, Rhodes, I need to address the complaint you mentioned about Waverly's hygiene and illness. Based on what I reviewed, there is no evidence of a health hazard. And I want to be clear, if you make claims like that again without cause, it becomes a different kind of issue. Rhodes' smile cracked, just for a second, but I saw it. After the landlord left, Rhodes stood in the kitchen, silent. He did not look at me. He did not speak. He just opened the fridge and stared at his new shelf like it was unfamiliar territory. I went to my drawer, took out my orange juice, and poured myself a glass. My hands were steady. Rhodes finally said quietly, I did not think you would take it that far. I turned slightly, meeting his eyes. I did not take it far, I said. I took it seriously. That weekend, something small happened that felt like a final twist, the kind that makes you realize how deep someone's entitlement really went. Grant came over again, but this time, he looked uncomfortable the moment he stepped into the kitchen. His eyes darted to the fridge, then to Rhodes, then to me. Rhodes tried to act normal, but his energy was off, too stiff. Grant cleared his throat and said, Hey man, I am going to head out early. I forgot I have plans. Rhodes blinked. What plans? Grant's eyes flicked to me, then away. He shrugged. Just stuff. As soon as Grant left, Rhodes slammed his phone down on the counter. He turned to me, voice sharp. What did you say to him? I stared back. Nothing. Rhodes's chest rose and fell. He knows. He knows you made me look like some kind of thief. I did not move. I did not argue. I simply opened my phone, scrolled, and showed him the message Grant had sent me that morning. Hey Waverly, random, but I wanted to apologize. Rhodes told me you were messy and sick and that he was worried. But then he asked me if I wanted some orange juice, and he literally grabbed a carton with your name on it. I do not want to be involved. I just thought you should know. I watched Rhodes read it. His face went pale, then red, then blank. And in that blankness, I saw the truth. He did not even realize he had crossed a line with Grant. He had been so used to taking, so used to assuming nobody would call it what it was, that he did it in front of a witness like it was normal. Rhodes swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. I slid my phone back into my pocket, calm as a locked door. I did not expose him. He exposed himself. 2 weeks later, Rhodes asked to transfer to month because, as he put it, he needed flexibility. The landlord told me privately that Rhodes had also asked if he could remove my name from the lease early. The landlord said no and offered me the option to renew a loan when the term ended. That night, I sat in the quiet apartment, sipping my orange juice, feeling something I had not felt here in a long time. safety. On move-out day, Rhodes carried his boxes out without looking at me. No apology. No goodbye. Just a final stiff nod, like he wanted to pretend this was mutual. Right before he left for the last time, he paused in the kitchen, eyes on the fridge, and said under his breath, "You really could have just talked to me." I walked to my shelf, took my orange juice, and held it in my hand like a trophy he could never touch again. "I did talk to you," I said softly. "You just only listened when your mouth finally had nothing left to steal."